Good morning. It's wonderful to be worshiping God this morning. I am so thrilled and so happy and excited to see, and I hope he doesn't mind me saying this, but to see Jackson leading singing this morning. Jonathan at Oliver Creek in Memphis a week or so ago, led singing for a very large congregation there, and he was kind of, I think, a little not fearful, but he had never done that before. And so I'm grateful to see the young men as they're called saying, "Here am I, I will serve." And so grateful for the young men of the congregation and for all that can do that. This last week we participated, several of the men, maybe some of you online, were also able to do that. And hopefully this will reboot, we'll see. And so several of the men were able to participate in the house-to-house school of evangelism, and over Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. And as I had said previously, it was not just a time of inspiration and encouragement, but it was just a good time to learn so many practical principles. And I know that Robert and Brent and Blake and different ones would say amen to that, wouldn't you? And so we hopefully will be able to, over the next year at least, bring some of those ideas and principles. And in our worship services, we will have times when we will be passing out booklets and going through them, very simple things that you can do that will equip you. And one of the things that we learned this week, which we kind of instinctively know, is that it requires all of us. It requires every single one of us, and there's a place and a position and a role for every one of us in evangelizing this neighborhood and the world, but just looking at this neighborhood. And so hopefully we will be able to implement that over the next year or so. And so that's something that I hope that you will be looking forward to. And hopefully you'll be looking forward to that. And I just was thinking that song, must I go empty-handed, must I meet my Savior so? And so many of us have said to me and to others, I wish I could, reach out and teach my neighbor or my family member or a friend, and I don't know how to do that, and I'd like to know. And so we're going to, as a congregation, we're going to stumble a little bit as we're taught. We're going to learn. You remember a man named Cole Wade, a young man from Freed Harden, preached here, substituted one time for me when I was traveling. Moved, I can't remember the congregation. Do you remember Robert up
near Millington?
Near Millington?
I think so.
And but it's a small congregation way out in the country. And I think they had like 30 or 35 or so. And as they've implemented all of these ideas and principles over just the last, I don't know if it's 6 months or a year, their congregation has basically doubled in size. They've had, I think, 18 or 20 baptisms. A congregation out in the sticks, in the middle of nowhere, according to Rob Whitaker. And that's not unusual for any of these congregations that he has taught this to. Greenfield, we know where Greenfield is, over where Brother Glenn Aries and Elder. We know where Covington is, over here near Millington. And so, and some of those are large congregations, but he's worked with, congregations very tiny. And by implementing these principles, it requires all of us to be involved. Then we will be able to see growth, physical, spiritual, and evangelistic. But it will require every one of us to be involved. And we'll explain that over the period of many, many weeks and months and maybe a year or more as we do that. I don't know why there it is. If you would turn in your Bibles to Ecclesiastes chapter 3. Ecclesiastes chapter 3. This morning, we're going to look at some ideas, especially one verse, verse 7 of Ecclesiastes chapter 3. I love this passage. It's very poetic. It's read many times at funerals, and yesterday, many of us went and showed our concern and care and love for the Quarles family, and I hope, and I believe that they felt that care, that love from us and many others yesterday as we visited Mark's dad and the visitation and funeral there. It would be appropriate to read this at any time, and so we're going to read it now. Solomon, the writer, says, "To everything there is a season, and a time for every purpose under heaven." There's a time for everything. There's a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to pluck what is planted, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to break down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to cast away stones and a time to gather stones, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to gain and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time of war and a time of peace. I'd like for us to concentrate on verse 7, the second part, that says a time to keep silence and a time to speak. There is a time to listen, a time to be silent. We're often uncomfortable with silence. Many times, if I were just to stand here for a few minutes and say nothing, you'd be wondering what's going on. Has he lost his mind? Can he not remember what he's trying to say? Whenever you're listening to a friend, many times I know that we want to speak and not kind of let the person finish and cut them off, and that's kind of considered to be a little bit rude. But we need to listen. And in the Old Testament, in Ecclesiastes, and in the book of James, God tells us that we need to listen. Some of us are really good at talking. We have classes about how to talk and how to present ideas. And as we study about evangelism and how to reach out and teach our neighbors and our family and friends about Christ and the church, there is a time to listen. In fact, there is what's called a silent partner, that usually we try to have two people teaching at least one person. And the second person is the silent partner. Don't know how many times that I've taught someone, and Tammy, my wife, is a silent partner. Or if she's teaching another lady, which I've said before, I highly recommend that if at all possible, then she needs someone else in the congregation to be a silent partner. And you say, "I'm not doing anything. I'm just there. I'm just present." But you're doing a lot of things. One, you're being an encouragement to the person that's teaching. You might be the person that Tammy or some woman says, "Would you pray?" There might be a time when you can build that relationship with that other person in a way that maybe if Tammy's sick or whoever the teacher is can't. And so there's so many different reasons why that silent partner is there. And they're also learning from the teacher how to teach. And so there is a time to listen in Bible studies, personally, one-on-one. There's a time to listen at all times. It would not be a bad idea. Someone said that the biggest communication problem that we have is that we do not listen to understand. We're not listening to comprehend, but we're listening so that we can answer. I've talked with people at times that have been cut off so many times by people that maybe have a fast mind and they're ready to jump in, waiting for just that comma, and all of a sudden they jump in and go off on a tear. And I think, well, you didn't hear anything I said. I don't feel heard. In our relationship at home, many times, I did this with my mother yesterday, but she's a little hard of hearing, a little bit in one ear. And went over to visit my brother. And at times I said, Mom, did you hear me? And she'd be looking out the window. Mom, did you hear me? She said, yeah. Did you understand? Well, no, I heard this word or that word. So I had to kind of say, well, would you repeat back to me what you understood? It was pretty important what it was. And she sometimes was able to repeat back, and sometimes she wasn't. But sometimes the biggest communication problem is we don't listen to understand the other person. In Bible studies, it's so important that sometimes you just listen. I was reminded when we heard about Rob Whitaker, who taught the course this year, about a man, I think I mentioned his name before. He's a faithful member of the church, and his wife is as well. He worked in Brazil's telecommunications. That would be the equivalent of our AT&T, way back. And his name was Eliasir. And I went to visit Eliasir one time. I believe he came to our worship services. And it was on a Saturday afternoon. And I went and took another young man with me. I usually try to go and visit people with someone else with me, not just by myself. And Eliasir loved to talk. And to be honest, he talked about everything. He talked about nothing. And he talked, and he talked, and he talked, and he talked, and I sat there and listened. And I listened for hours. I was there hours and hours and hours and listened to him talk. And finally, at the end, he kind of asked me how I was doing. And I was able to say something or other. But it's interesting, my instinct was to listen, and I found out later, after we were able to study with him, he had a lot of things that he just needed to say to somebody he wasn't able to say. And he said it. And later he even apologized because he remembers what he did, and it was kind of rude a little bit, actually. But he said, I just was going to see, if I could wear you out. And, you would go away, and I didn't go away. And after a period of time, there was an open door. And we asked him, can we come back and talk about the Bible with you? Yes. Oh, wonderful. And we went back, and that wasn't the only time that he talked. And he's a talker. And when I visited to Brazil, one of the best of many memories I have of the people that we've been able to, not just me and Tim, but others, to baptize and convert that are faithful. He's older than I am, and his wife. And Elza, bless her heart, she didn't ever say a word. Of course, she probably can't, but she just didn't talk. But she is the sweetest, will do anything, can cook up a storm, will do anything in the church or whatever. And but just wonderful lady, Nelza. Eliasir Nelza. I wish I had a picture of them. But when I go back to Brazil, they're there. They're faithful, and they're strong, they're taught. But what if I hadn't listened? What if I had just, said, we're from the church, and I'm going to teach you, and can we sit down and study the Bible? And that's really not the way to go about it. And it may be that you have to listen a lot, and so as we talk about Bible studies with other people, there's a lot of time when you just have to be quiet. Just have to listen. That doesn't hurt when you're visiting somebody at a funeral home like yesterday. Sometimes people are hurting a lot. They just want someone to listen to them. They just want to express their feelings and their emotions and their ideas, and sometimes they're confused. And thankfully, Mark's father and mother are faithful. We're faithful at Fairview, I believe it was, Church of Christ over near Dyersburg. Sweetest lady, just so sweet. I don't know how old she is, but just the sweetest lady, and I wish I had known Mark's dad, seriously. Sometimes we just have to listen to people. We have to listen. And not listen to answer or reply. I've heard people say, I can't study the Bible. I don't know if they ask me this, I won't be able to I'm not experienced in the Bible like I should, or Bible studies, or they're going to ask something. I don't know. Sometimes we think everybody's a NASA scientist and an engineer, for somewhere, and they're not. And I found that even those kind of people have no knowledge of the Bible, hardly, a lot of them. They don't understand the Bible. They don't understand God and God's Word. And so you just have to listen. I think my computer's listening. It's hard to change it. One of the most sincere forms of respect is listening. Is listening to what another person has to say. We've talked about before that everybody is special. They are. Even special people that have deficiencies mentally or otherwise, whether they have MS or MD or some other mental illness, are special. And they're special in God's eyes. And we have to have Down syndrome, lots of care, lots of love. And listen to those people. I'm reminded of David Mormon. You don't know David Mormon. David Mormon, I guess he's probably close to 50. I don't know. He has Down syndrome. He is at the Malden Church of Christ in Malden near Greenville, South Carolina. That was our sponsor. That was to work for 17 years and continue to support our work financially. And Joe Mormon and Carol, his mother, Carol passed away recently, but Joe's still strong, faithful in families. All of it. But David was baptized many years ago. And they treat him like he's just normal. He's Down syndrome, which means but he knows a lot. He's worked at Wendy's. He's won Special Olympics. I mean, he can throw a baseball, softball, which is farther than anybody. He can out-bowl anybody in terms of numbers and does. He has a lot, and Clemson, he's a Clemson fan, if you know where Clemson is in South Carolina. He can tell you the scores from 5 years ago, what game it was. And I can't remember what I ate yesterday. But he can tell you because people that have special, I call them special disabilities, deficiencies, whether they're mental or physical, they sometimes have other abilities. People that can't see or blind, they can hear really well. And on it goes. And so your body helps other parts of your body when you have those deficiencies. But everybody deserves our respect. And one of the most sincere forms of respect is just listening to people. And if we do, then we'll go a lot further in our communication. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me. Have you ever said that? I don't know if I've ever said that. I sure thought it. It's said so many times in playgrounds, and you remember maybe growing up, people said that to you, stick and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. But they really always hurt, don't they? We say that as a defense mechanism because it really does hurt. We don't like for children to say that, and so sometimes people throw sticks and stones in our lives, and we become bitter and build up our defense mechanism, and it may not break our bones, but the words hurt. I could probably say certain words today that will hurt you. In fact, I'm certain of that. There's words that I would never say to you and never want to hear, but words have a lot of power, don't they? That's not Jamie, that's God. God said, let there be light, and what happened? It was light. Well, that's God, but God gave us the power to speak. And through history, He's given even animals at times, dumb animals, the power to speak to man. So words have a lot of power. And we need to use the words that we can utter in a good and positive way, and especially as we look at this year evangelism, and that scares people to death. And in a Bible class, Brent said, and it's true, is if you're scared to death, that's fine. We haven't done that maybe, or don't know how to go about it, but I will do everything in my power. And I have experience in this to teach how to do it. And you're going to get frustrated. It's not always easy. It takes sacrifice. Not going to say it's not going to cost money. It's going to cost money. We're going to have to buy booklets, and everybody get a booklet and go through it together. It's going to cost that. No expense for the Digital School of Evangelism. I talked to Rob. We're going to get signed up to that. No cost for that at all. It's free. And at times we might show some videos and some other things, but it's real important that as a congregation, out in the country, out in the sticks, I don't want to say it that way, but you know what I mean, country, where we think we don't have a lot of prospects. We've had dozens and dozens and dozens, probably hundreds, I don't know, over the last 8 years to come through those doors. That at times we're visited, at times we're called, at times sent cards. But what we learned this week, and I think it's really true, is you really have to love people a lot. And you have to really send a lot of cards. Sometimes 4, 5, 6, 10, 20. Someone, everybody in the congregation send a card to that one person. Not one card with 25 names on it, but 25 cards with your name on it. That makes a difference, doesn't it? People know, I feel loved, I feel cared about, and you know what? People need that. They don't come here because they don't want to go to heaven or because, of doctrine. They come here because they're looking for help, support, God, prayer, something that we can offer and we can give, and we need to do that. And so it may very well be that we might need to have from time to time someone in our home. When's the last time that you invited on Sunday afternoon someone for lunch besides your family? Stepping on toes, maybe? There's times when we need to invite those from church to our homes. Rob says that when someone visits, the first thing they build up a tradition at their congregation, said the first time he takes them out to eat. And we may need to do that. Someone, me or someone, take someone out to eat and have time to listen and spend time with them. That's unusual. People don't do that in today's world. And then the second time, if they come back to services, they've already received all these cards, and they'll come back a lot of times because they received so many cards and they feel love, and there's something going on in that congregation. They come back, and then the next time he goes to Rob's house. And his wife cooks a meal, and I don't know how we get around that. I've talked to Tammy, I don't know how it's going to work. But I'm all in some way, form, or fashion with that. And maybe I have to go over to your house with these people to sit down and have time to listen, have a meal. And it's amazing, and there's a lot more involved in this day. But words have power. And so when we come to worship service, let's not talk about negative things or how horrible things are, but let's talk about how great and grand God is. And great and grand the church is, because it is it not? The church is grand. It's great. It really is. It's majestic. It's otherworldly. It's the kingdom of God. It's wonderful. And I'm excited. I'm glad my children, I thought this morning, every one of my children are in worship services. And it's special. And it takes a lot of work. And we all need to bring our families to heaven with us. Everyone. Everyone. Our children, our parents, our grandparents, our uncles, our aunts. I mean, that's where we can start and maybe practice on them a little bit with some of these studies. But they're not totally lost yet. Till their dying breath, there's opportunities, and not because we're right, but because God is right. And the materials we're going to use are materials that have gone through hundreds of congregations and hundreds of thousands of people over at least 5 years, the last 5 years, with this particular program. It's not something new or different you'll see than what you already know. We're just organized in a different way, with a different motivation. Words have power. We've talked in the past about words that heal and words that hurt. We just have a few more minutes, and I'm going to talk for a few seconds about words that heal. Have you been to Jesus for the cleansing power? Are you washed in the blood of the Lamb? Words that heal. We need to decide today that we're going to talk words, speak words that heal. Because people's hearts are hurting. There's things that people say at work to us that are awful ugly, aren't they? They just are. I said before, I used to work in a factory in Fort House, Arkansas. After 6 weeks, I decided I'll do anything but work in a factory. I hated it. The cursing and the kind of people. Maybe it's some good people, but I wasn't around them. And it was detrimental to my spiritual life and my physical existence. I had varnish blowing out of my nose for hours afterward, because I had to paint picture frames, tens of thousands a day, as fast as I could go. I thought, I'm not doing this. I'll do anything. I'll sell vacuum cleaners. I'll go back to college, which is what I did. Words that heal. Sometimes in our families, there's words that we hear from family members. Maybe inadvertently, maybe they didn't mean it, but words that they speak that hurt us. And we don't know that at the time, maybe us that are speaking. There's things that I can say probably to you that may hurt you from time to time, and I ask for forgiveness before, and I know I have that from you, I hope. Sometimes we may say things to one another that may be quick or hurtful or maybe just snipping or whatever, and we need to be careful. We need to be careful and speak words that heal and not words that hurt. Here's a few of them. Have you ever heard some of those? You're too short. You're a nerd. You're a loser. Hey, fatso. You're just dumb. Hey, bucktooth. Gay. Queer. Wimp. Geek. Black or white. And on it goes. Those words hurt. I told this story, Down Flat. Some of you knew him from Free Harmony. He was my Greek teacher way back. And I know Greek, Dow and his wife Della and their daughter. And a lot of people didn't know that Della was Polish background. All of us have backgrounds. I'm Scottish-Irish. I think a little Indian, I'm not sure. You probably have other races within you. But Brother Dow said one time, many times, he said, I don't like Polish jokes. I don't know if today's world, that's what happens, but back when I was in the 70s, Polak jokes, it's called Polak jokes. You remember what I'm talking about. I can still remember several of them. It didn't be, but laugh, how many Polish people does it take, to put in a light bulb, one to hold light, nine to turn chair. I'm not saying it to be funny, but you know what I mean, those kind of things. Brazilians have Portuguese jokes because even though they were from Portuguese descendant, they're way over in Europe and they think they're snobby, and so there's those kind of jokes. Brazilians and Argentines have jokes. Americans have jokes about, probably British people or Indian people, and on it goes. But the point is that words hurt. And jokes that we think are harmless are not harmless to someone that is Polish. And Dow Flat says, don't ever come around me with a Polish joke because my wife is Polish and I love her. And I hate those kind of things. And it never really dawned on me because I just was raised with all kinds of dumb jokes that people would say. But finally I realized we need to be careful with what we say. Words hurt, don't they? You know what I mean? Words hurt. Hurting people hurt people. Why do people hurt others? Because they're hurting. That might end up in a murder, that might end up in some other physical manifestation, but hurting people hurt people. Loving people don't usually hurt people. Godly people that are not only made in the image of God, but try to practice what God and who God is and Christ, they don't go around on purpose hurting people. And many times they're so full of the Spirit of Christ, they don't hurt people either. And so it doesn't matter where you are today. What matters is that we change our perspective and that we allow and make the decision that today, starting today, I'm going to quit saying things, I'm going to listen more, and I'm going to quit hurting other people. That's a bigger task than many of us may know. Because we have been raised with an abusive parent. I know a little bit about that. We may have been raised by an abusive grandparent. We may have been abused by a teacher, and I don't mean sexually, I mean physically in other ways. Or a counselor. There's so many stories I can't even begin to tell about people that have been hurt horribly by people of trust, or that they should be able to trust but can't. Hurting people hurt people. 1 Corinthians chapter 13 is the chapter on love. It's the chapter where God tells us through the Holy Spirit what love is. Love is not what your parents practiced sometimes, or told you, or what you learned in a book. But love is what God says that it is. And so you can turn over to 1 Corinthians chapter 13, that chapter on love, and we know the Bible says that though I speak magnificently, I can speak like the greatest orator in the world, though I speak with the tongues of men and of angels, but have not love, I am and have become a sounding brass or a clanging cymbal. In other words, it's just noise. And though I have the gift of prophecy and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and though I have all faith, I could remove mountains. But if I have not love, I have nothing. I can take everything I have and give it away. I know people that love to give to others and do, and almost have nothing to wear or to eat themselves. They're caring and they're loving. Though I bestow all my goods to feed the poor, and though I give my body to be burned, but have not love, it profits me nothing. It may profit the other person, but me. And then the Bible said love is suffering long. You love your wife, you love your husband, you love your mom, your dad, your friend, your colleague. Love suffers long. Like Job is kind. Is your love kind? Are we kind? Boy, kindness is something that's always hard to find nowadays. Love does not envy. Not jealous. Not jealous. Love does not parade itself. It's not puffed up. It's not egotistical. It's not looking out for number one. It doesn't behave rudely. Know someone's rude all the time? It's rude. I do. Does not seek its own. Is not provoked. Thinks no evil. does not rejoice in sin, but rejoices in the truth. Love bears all things. Love believes all things. Love hopes all things. Love endures all things. Love never fails. But you know, if there's prophecies and knowledge and tongues, they're all going to fail. In other words, they're not going to exist after a period of time. But love continues on. At the very end of the chapter, it says, now abides faith, hope, love, these three, but the greatest of these is love. I don't know exactly what Paul was saying here, but now abide faith, hope, and love. What we're not going to need in heaven is faith and hope, because we're going to be in the presence of God. But love is going to be there. And so if we don't learn to grow in love our neighbor, love enough to give in, to sacrifice, to learn Bible studies and how to do that, and it's not always going to be the easiest thing in the world. It definitely is not the most convenient thing. The greatest of these is love. And so when you have these words that are on the board, and you can read them for yourself, those are words of love, aren't they? You know, confidence and commitment and treatment and nurture and faith and care and confidence and recovery. All those are healing words. Those are words of healing. I'm praying for you, and in God's name, I hope that you're healed. I hope you recover. We're praying for that. Does prayer work? I heard someone say, I would say, what? You know, someone said, last week someone prayed for me and it happened. Is it that quick? Sometimes it is. Sometimes it really is that quick. You have someone that is sick, keep praying, don't give up ever. God's listening. If it's the will of God, it may actually save the physical health of your loved one or somebody else. Now, if it doesn't mean God is guilty. If they're walking in the light, as hopefully they will be. But even if they pass away, that's good. That's great for them. It's great for them. May it be great for us. And so words that heal. Someone said the words of kindness are more healing to a drooping heart than balm or honey. The words of kindness. Way back when I was talking about this David woman that has Down syndrome and Malden, I forgot to mention that he participates in the worship. He will come forward and he will do the Lord's Supper, and he will say things that sometimes people don't really understand 100%, but you get the meaning. And he's very sincere in his heart. And one time people say, well, should we allow a young man like that, is not 100% intelligible? But you can understand what he's saying. It's just on a certain level. And he prays for his following, the church, and visitors, and all kinds of things. He was raised with kindness and love from Joe and Carol. The words of kindness are more healing to a discouraged or a drooping heart than balm or honey. Our time is up. We have a lot more to say. In Matthew 12, either make the tree good and its fruit good, or else make the tree bad and its fruit bad, for a tree is known by its fruit. How will you know? You want to work with somebody, convert somebody, then don't go around doing things you shouldn't do or saying things you shouldn't do. Don't tell those jokes and don't say bad words and don't, all those things that you probably shouldn't do. And it's not just, as we said Wednesday, just on Sunday. But how do other people look at us? And are you respected? Maybe they disagree with you. People can disagree, but are you respected in the area where you work in community? We need to make the tree good. Sometimes we're not good. Sometimes our hearts are poisoned. For whatever reason, they're poisoned, and we need to change that. We need to change it now. We need to change it today. We need to make the tree good and its fruit good, or else the tree is bad and its fruit bad, for a tree is known by its fruit. And so you have opportunity. God has given you one more minute, one more hour, one more day, one more worship service to either come forward and say, I want to ask for the prayers for this specific thing, or in general, or by yourself, you can pray. But you need to do that. You need to make yourself pure, the tree good, so that when you reach out to others, people know, they feel whether you're good or not, whether you have good intentions. And that will bring people to Christ. This morning, if in any way you need to come, please do that as we sing.